Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We are here with another edition of Midlife Mocha. And of course, I'm here with one of my favorite FBI agents, Jeanette, but she brought a very special guest today, and that supervisory special agent, Paul Davis. So, welcome,
Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Great. Now, as you guys know, today we're going to be talking about Cybersecurity Awareness Month wrap up. And Special Agent Davis is going to provide us with information, a little bit about some cybersecurity, I guess, issues and things that we should look out for. So, if you have any questions, you can place them in the comments and he'll be more than happy to answer them for you. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome, Special Agent Davis. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you. It's very nice to be here. Nice to be able to speak to your audience and share some cyber awareness. We just got through October where we're trying to push out the information to everyone. As you know, many of the items that we're trying to push, the issues is the first issue is always being able to know that there's a battle going on, and being prepared and being aware is like the first item up. So I want to share being aware with everyone in your audience.
Right.
And hopefully I can give them a little bit of insight about what we're seeing with the FBI and here in El Paso and around our AOR.
Okay, great, great, great. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to place them in the comments and you can message our page and we'll try to get those answered if we can. But right now, we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So, Special Agent Davis, please tell us one of the issues that seems to be really prevalent is, I guess it's called BEC.
Yes.
And I was saying it wrong to my friends. I was saying BES.
Yeah.
I was like business email security. No, that wasn't it. And so I got that information correct. So tell us a little bit about business email compromise.
Happy to. Yes. So you weren't too far off with BES. So there's also business email spoofing.
Okay.
That's another thing we can talk about. But BEC is business email compromise. And basically, this is the largest, just to put it in perspective, this is the most used type of vulnerability that people have across the nation is business email compromise, because the number one way people get into emails and such is by human complacency or not being aware that people are trying to get into your emails. And so when people are just going on, and what is our habit? We just click, click, click. We haven't really trained our minds to know that, hey, I don't need to be clicking on every email. But what a business email compromise, I think the best way to explain it, Monica, for your listeners would be to explain a situation. And I'll tell you, here in El Paso, we had recently some injury attorney business where they were expecting to receive a payout from the government on one of their clients had been an accident, and so the government was settling. And so what happened is the day they were expected to receive the settlement from the government, they didn't receive the payment in their invoice, in their incoming. And so then they didn't think much about it because they're like, oh, it's the government, it'll come. Right? So maybe a little too trusting, and then waited a day and waited a few days before they realized. And it was a sizable $1 million sum. And so it never came. And so when they finally called up the entity, they said, hey, where's the money that we sent? Oh, well, we sent it to you a week ago. And why didn't you, here's our proof that we sent it to you. And so what happened is someone in the business clicked on an email and allowed an executable file, which allowed let's just use bad guy or threat actor to come in and place remote access tools on their computer. And so basically what they started doing is they acted as if they were the payout or the receiving accounts receivable department, and then intercepted, and they put rules on the computer, because on every application that you have on your computer, you can set rules to say, I want all the emails from this place to come directly to me. And they acted as the man in the middle. And so it's called BEC is commonly by the email hack is also a man-in-the-middle attack, which is what facilitates the payment. So someone goes in and they start acting as if I'm Monica, and then so send me all these emails related to the money, and then they say, okay, we're going to have a change. I want to send you my new account number where I want this money to go. And then the people think they're talking to somebody that's trusted, and they take the new account number, insert it in, and then the next thing you know, $1 million is being sent to another account. So business email compromise, and approximately in the high 80 percentile range, it's because someone clicked on an email or because of the human factor, which is why it's so popular with threat actors, is because, again, we as just regular citizens, if you're not aware of this, which we probably should be aware by now if we're hearing the news lately, right? There's so much about, some other things that we'll talk about, the ransomware, the BCs, money that's been diverted. It really has been over the last, especially during COVID, when everybody's working from remote access, remote homes. Like, people are logging onto their work computers and dialing in remotely. So there's a specific application that allows you to do that. And that's what subjects or threat actors are attacking, is that remote access tools. And they're also attacking the human element when everyone wants to go, oh, what's that next email I got? Or what's that next text I got? And they're just clicking on without really fully understanding, because the way we've developed all these softwares is we're trusting people we know. But if you're not hearing their voice, or you don't know who you're talking with, you don't know who it could be on the other side of that email or text, or the way they're reaching out to you on Facebook and such. So take that extra second, and I'll sprinkle in a lot of ways to protect yourself throughout the conversation. But sprinkle in that little bit of that verification. Make the phone call. Hey, did you send this email? Like, if it doesn't feel right, and if someone's trying to hurry you or urge you to do this, or someone that the simple way is like, and we all do this, is, I don't know, I've never sent this person money. Let me just call and make sure this is them, and take that extra step.
Okay. So I guess threat actors, because this is my first time hearing that term. Threat actors are really the bad guys.
Yes.
So that's kind of a nice way of saying the hackers or whoever. Okay.
Exactly. And I can get into that, expand on the threat actors a little bit, particularly what we're seeing here in West Texas and the nation. Threat actors, we kind of clump them into two categories. They're the ones that are ideological, like the hackers that are like for climate control and, for a belief, something. They'll come in, they'll break into certain organizations or governments' sites because they have an ideology. Like, they believe, hey, we're destroying our world, or we're not protecting animals, or what have you. And then the other side of it is monetary type of people that are doing it for monetary reasons, right? And so a lot of those are, your hackers that are doing it to get money, to get payments. These are the top of these groups are called, I'll sprinkle in a little bit more with the threat actors. We call them advanced persistent threats, APTs. And so those are like the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, believe it or not. A lot of them are those advanced persistent threats. And so what I want to share with your audience is these advanced persistent threats, normally they're not targeting our everyday citizen, right? But they may target you if you're like an executive that has access to companies. But what they're targeting is these large organizations that have insurance and coverage, to be able to get where I can get money, and this is something that Jeanette's specializes in, is intellectual properties, stuff that we're developing in the United States that another country might want, because it gives them a shortcut on a lot of the hard work that's done here. Like, why would China want to invest $20 million on some sort of aerospace defense technology when they can just steal it, right? And then be ahead of the game. So advanced persistent threat. And the other thing I want to say about those advanced persistent threat, I'd like your audience to visualize that these people are they're professionals. They mimic businesses. They mimic, hey, I have someone that develops a malware. I have another department that does exploitation or analysis of different networks to see how we can get in. They actually have another department that's, doing the communications for, and now I'm kind of going into another topic, the ransomware, where, hey, I won't give your network back until you pay me in cryptocurrency. So they're very specialized, and they're very professional. These persons work. They go into work, they clock in at 8 o'clock, and all they're doing is they go to a building where there's possibly another 100 workers in this building, and they're all their goal is to try and get into networks so they can extort money payments from large organizations throughout the world. The U.S. is the number one target because we're very blessed here. There's a lot of great business because we're typically mostly business friendly, right? And so a lot of ingenuity comes from the United States. So just and also the number one economy in the world, right? So people want to attack us because we're a vulnerable threat there.
Okay. Wow.
I know I'm chunking off into a lot. So
that was a lot, but I can only imagine just that little piece.
Yes.
That little piece.
Yes.
Before we get into more of the ransomware, when it comes to the business email compromise, so I guess it really sounds like it doesn't matter if people have virus protection, because if they click on it, does that have something to do with it?
Exactly. Well, so if your email, so we'll get in a little bit into some of the techniques, tactics, and procedures, policies that these people try to employ. But if you have a public-facing server, and where many email servers are, right, there's still a firewall typically from that server into the internal networks, internal parts of a network. But if a person clicks on an email, they're inside that email server. Most typically what they'll do is they'll try and lateral or pivot to other persons in there and that have more administrative rights. They have, like someone in the IT department that has access to different compartments of a network. And then if they can get into that other administrator's rights, or what we see with small businesses in particular is they don't have their own IT department or security. They outsource it, right? They pay someone else, hey, can you set this up for me or what have you? And then a lot of times, because a small business doesn't have a lot of money invested in their security, employees will come and go, persons with administrative rights or rights to the network come and go. But if they don't have someone that's constantly closing out old accesses, we call it the privilege of least accessibility, where you don't want everyone to have access to your network. But if in small businesses, if employees are coming and going and they have those old accounts and they're never closed, that's a vulnerability. That's where someone can find, they can find a way to that access, and then they can work from there to be able to get inside your network.
Okay. And that was one of my questions about the vulnerabilities. And that's, like you mentioned, that's one of them. And I don't think we think about that a lot.
Nope.
Especially when people do leave a business and they've had access, to that. And that's one. Are there other vulnerabilities when it comes to small businesses?
So again, just that fact is that it's good to have those infrastructure as a service, as we call it, where if I'm a small business, I necessarily don't want to operate my own network. So I'll pay someone else to use their server, right? And so if you're using somebody else's server, you want to question the amount of security that they have on that. So I guess it's asking those secondary and tertiary questions about your provider or your IT department and what it is that service is. So one is the weaknesses are the people, the weaknesses are your IT department, and the weaknesses are if you're not managing your network, who is managing it and what security policies do they follow. Because many times you could be using a infrastructure as a service, like where you're renting out space on a server or a cloud device. If it's not from one of the major companies where you know they have that input, it could be a local company that provides that, and they may not have any security or very minimal. It might just be an AV, or we call antivirus, but you need more than just that antivirus. You need to do more of the preventative measures of where you're monitoring the network to see what IPs are coming in, from where are these IPs coming in. And if no one's monitoring that and they're just providing, hey, here's your server where you can store your memory and what you need to operate, you're vulnerable there. So and numerous amounts of vulnerabilities. And you mentioned there was something that we were going to talk about was, we were talking about Google, right?
Yes.
How can the smaller businesses protect themselves if these larger companies, Google, Facebook, they're getting hit, right? So I will say, for smaller businesses, to some extent, you're a little safer because you're not being targeted necessarily by those advanced persistent threats. Those APTs, they're out again. They're trying to focus on the big money things. So what the Google and the Facebook, those were very sophisticated hacks. And what I mean by sophisticated is they didn't just do kind of a email phishing type of technique. They did do some of that, but what they did in specifically in the Google attack was there's a such thing as a 0-day attack. So that means when new software is pushed out, developers are whenever there's new software, so there's so much code in there, you can't always catch every little detail about a vulnerability, right? So, but when developers are pushing out software, they want to get it to market, which will be a common thing when we talk about Internet of Things later on. They want to get it to market, so they don't have time to put in all the security protocols. So a lot of threat actors will know, hey, there's a vulnerability in this software that's coming out. So Facebook was using a new type of software application, and there was a known 0-day vulnerability. So the day they pushed it out, the bad guys already knew what those vulnerabilities were, and they used them to get in there and create an access point. But they combined it with a phishing scheme as well, to be able to move laterally and move around. So very sophisticated attack. Smaller businesses generally are not targeted, but they will. And one of the first things they do once they're in your network, the first thing these APTs are looking for is, hey, what type of insurance coverage does this business have? And so if they're in your network and you don't have we call them the crown jewels. What is it that makes your business important? Do I have intellectual property? Do I have to deal with customers? Do I have personal information that is important to me? If it's PII, you can, after you do your daily business, you can take that off of the public facing servers, and we call it segment. You can put that in a different separate network that's not hooked up to the internet, that people cannot easily access. So, and it doesn't have to be PII. It could be, like I said, if you have a design for a product or something, don't put that on the network that's open to everyone's email, right? You want to put that on something, we call it compartmentalization, where it's not connected to where everyone has access to, separate plumbing, as we say, where everyone can't get to it. I know I start off on one point and I just continue to build.
That was good. That's literally for a lot of businesses, because there are a lot of people opening small businesses now, especially during this time. So, and I think that may be one overlooked area. Increased security.
Yes.
So it makes sense.
And then now you're seeing there's I'm starting to see it now. It's not increased security. You want to be aware of your security, but you need to know what you want to protect, because you can easily go out there and overspend on security. Because again, look at these companies that spend millions and millions of dollars and they still get hacked. There's not a silver bullet for it, but it's kind of you want to have a layered approach. But you want to know the simplest way is, if, hey, my business needs this to run and I don't want to share that, put that on put that on a compartmentalized network where no one has access, or very few people have access.
Okay. So is that prevalent here in El Paso? Have there been small businesses or bigger businesses
Mm-hmm.
that have been compromised because of business?
Yeah. So we had a small business within the last few months. This one was an interesting one, and this one started off. I'll run you through. I won't. I'll put it out there. The FBI, we treat everyone that reports being a victim as a victim. We're not regulators. We're not there to come in and look at your information, but we're there to treat you as a victim. So I won't say names. I won't identify because we respect everyone, but I will say we had a small business, and it was a business. I guess it really doesn't even matter what type of business it was, but they did services. They did services for employees pre-employment checks. Let's just say that, right? So what this small business was, and it was, let's just say they probably were in, probably in the plus area of $750,000 a year they would profit, right? So small business, but decent sized business. And what they did is their IT department received an email, and the email said, "Hey, we know you're covered, but your AV, your antivirus is about to expire, so we're going to charge you another year's antivirus." And then they're like, "Whoa, we don't want that." And what they did is they did kind of a spoof where they made it look like it was coming from their antivirus provider, which it wasn't. If you hover your cursor over a lot of those URLs or those names, it'll really show you where that email is going to, right? And you'll notice that it's not really going to Google. It's going to Google with 2 E's or something. There's always a small detail, but they got an email and they were smart. They go, "Okay, I'm not just going to click on this," right? So they called the number. Well, the number was a call service for the threat actors. And they said, "Oh, well, let me look you up," right? Which is all fictitious. They're like, "Oh, well, it looks like, maybe we got it wrong that you're not really due up for your antivirus repayment. But if you just click on it, we'll be able to reimburse you that, we'll make sure that you don't get charged." And so they clicked on it, right? The number one, they clicked on the executable, and that's our number one thing. If you see something that's from external, your IT department can label it as an external email. You need to treat those with a little extra time. They clicked on it, and what it was is it allowed them access. So they're on the phone, small business, right? They're on the phone, and then the guy on the phone, he stops from being customer service to now he's an extortionist, and he's saying, "Hey, now I've dropped a remote access tool on your network, and I locked you out. You have access to none of your files." And I just want to take a moment there. I want to take a moment for the audience. If you have a business, or even if you have work in a business, and you just imagine you go to work and you don't have access. You're not making money. You're not paying bills. You're not getting accounts receivable. That's it. That's a scary thought, right? So, which leads us to something we'll get a chance to talk about, is how to prepare for that. But so he turned into an extortionist, and he's like, "Hey, if you don't go down to the bank right now and send me X amount of dollars," in this case, it was $60,000 in cryptocurrency. Actually, that one wasn't a cryptocurrency. It was just transfer the money to this account, right? We're gonna destroy. We're gonna start deleting all your files. So that's another thought. Like, not only do I not have access, now this guy that I let in is deleting my files from my network. So the gentleman promptly went down to the bank and transferred $60,000, right? And so something the FBI is able to do, I'll share with you, is we have the fraud kill chain, where if we're notified within a reasonable amount of time, there are certain things that we can do to recover that monies if it's reported quick enough. Unfortunately, if people aren't paying attention to their payout, their due outs, or where money's missing, they'll be telling us like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and sometimes that's outside of our range. So we were able to recover the small businesses' money, fortunately, because they reported it as soon as they hung up, and then they were able to start recovering their network, and bring in another security department to protect them. So
I'm in the habit of hovering over
good,
things,
nice,
and I immediately just So yeah, I know this is a scam,
Hmm.
but it is, I guess, kind of difficult for people to just think of that, especially when you're in a hurry at work or you have a lot to do. So I guess taking the time
Yes.
to make sure in this climate right now
Yep.
is
Yeah.
better than losing
Right.
a lot of that money. And I guess yeah.
Exactly.
So oh gosh,
Exactly.
that was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go into ransomware, and I know
Okay.
you
Good.
spoke briefly on
Yes. No, I
on
didn't
that.
define it though. You're right. And
Right.
so, ransomware basically is when, and most typically what we're seeing in ransomware is those advanced persistent threat actors, remember, and they'll, once they do is they have a whole process, right, to get into your network. And once they get into your network, the thing about ransomware is they're going to encrypt. They're going to do an encrypt, from the encryption technology out there is so simple to use now. They'll encrypt it with something where there's really no way that you're going to be able to get into your files, and they're going to hold on to the key to the decryption, and they're going to say, they're going to direct you. You're going to get a nice little ransom note,
Mhm.
and it says, "Hey, guess what?" And it's going to sound very professional. You can't get to your files, and contact us. Now they're doing it multi-layered. They'll say, contact us on our name and shame site on the dark web. They'll give you a dark web address where you can go to, and then they'll say, hey, oh, by the way, if you don't just send us the money right away, all of this, let's say PII, someone's social security number, date of birth, names, addresses, neighbor of your mother, we're going to go ahead and put that on. We're going to sell that to the highest bidder. So if someone got into your network, got all your passwords, and then if you don't pay me in 5 hours, I'm going to go ahead and sell that off. And they do that. But if you want to test run, if you want to test it, pick a couple files, and I'll send you the key on those 2 files, and you can decrypt them. It's like full customer service, right? And so they do that, and a lot of companies, because insurance companies, if you think bigger businesses, they don't want out there that we got hacked.
Mhm.
So some of these ones, if Google's getting hacked, if Facebook's getting hacked, if SolarWinds is getting hacked, these are the top notch. If these businesses are getting hacked, everybody's vulnerable, right?
Right.
So, but if you're with a major investment firm or something, or a banking entity, or a public facing business, you don't want it known, hey, that we got hacked. And now there are laws where they're going to have to do a notification. Like they'll have to send you might get this notice, and they'll water it down very nicely. Oh, we happen to have gotten, we had a little incident where someone got in for a few minutes, but we're going to provide you with a year of free some service that'll watch your credit monitoring. I can't say names, but
Yeah.
and then you'll forget, oh no, that's not that important, or I'll use the year. But a lot of these actors, some of this information is on the dark web for many, many years, and they'll come back. And if you have a bad attitude towards changing your passwords or not using the same password, some of us are guilty. I know you're out there right now. Oh man, I've used the same password, right? They'll come back many, many years later, and they'll get you. But the fact is, what we're dealing with when ransomware with these larger companies, and we've had a few incidences here in El Paso where they don't want the public to know. They make a bare minimum notice to us. They'll let us know, but then the communication, they don't share with us anything else. Like we want to know we call them IOCs, the indicators of compromise, or the initial vectors of intrusion. But they don't share that because they're advised for insurance reasons. They don't want it known to the public. They don't want their
The stakeholders.
yeah, the stakeholders or the people, the investors, their public stock market prices to plunge because they know that they were a victim. So what we're kind of into now is a vicious circle of where ransomware is getting these larger businesses. They're like, I have insurance. It's such a small percentage. It's not going to hurt me. I'm going to go ahead and pay it, get my stuff back, and then we're moving on. It's a money decision, right? And versus if my stock drops 5%, 3%, like they're thinking, oh, this $2 million out of my stock price is nothing, right? And then they'll move on. And so now you have these advanced persistent threat. They get paid so many millions of dollars. What they do with their money, they reinvest it, just like any good business. They reinvest it back in the business model. Everyone gets a paycheck, but then they're like, hey, let's get these better tools. Let's get these better servers. Let's get these better, higher, fast modems so that we can be more better at our business, and then re-victimizing everyone in the United States.
So the fact that, I mean, like, I know that it obviously can happen locally. And when you mentioned that, I can remember getting some of those emails from some of the major companies saying, oh, we just had a little incident. And, we'll monitor your credit or something. And like you mentioned, changing the password. And I deal with clients, family members, and I tell them all the time, change your password at least every 3 months or something. And they're like, oh, that's too much. Or I'm like, don't use the same password for everything.
Don't use the same one for the bank as you use for Facebook, as you use for personal email. And let's take a moment. You mentioned something. I know this is kind of an oversimplified. This is important for your listeners. We don't use passwords anymore. No more passwords. We go with pass phrases. So now it's not 8 characters, 10. Now it's like, and I won't say mine, but I'm pretty proud of mine. But if you spend 10 minutes, you can create really good pass phrases. So we're working against something that's called the work factor. So now think about it. These actors have been working with us for a long time. And now what they've created is a databases of passwords. All those Google hacks, all the Facebook hacks, they got those passwords. You know what they did is they put them in a little tool now that if they get into Monica's email, they're going to know your user ID, but now they're going to run a password against millions and millions of passwords that they have harvested from all these other data breaches. They built off of it, and these tools are available. So, but back to the point, those are called brute force attacks. So they have actual applications out there, Hashcat, John the Ripper, where these tools are out there free and they can use them to brute force attack. So what I wanted to get, I'm kind of excited because if everyone can say, okay, I will no longer use a password. I will now use a passphrase. And then the gringo went to the desert with Pancho Villa. I know it sounds long and what have you, but if you think about it, when you have a pass phrase that has 15 characters, if they're going to brute force, like they're going to use these large databases to attack, if you go from a typical 8-character password, they can brute force in less than 20 minutes now. So if it's the length of the password now that's important, it's not necessarily the capital letters or what. If you put a 15-word, now you're getting into a work factor. You can Google any of this stuff that I'm sharing. Google it, work factor, brute force, and you can say a 15-character passphrase effectively will take 1 million years to brute force attack, right? So not saying that they're still not going to try, but you're protecting yourself. And then use a different spin on your passphrase for different accounts. You can use 10 of the same characters and then add another 10 from something different. So it's that different one. But if you spend a few minutes if you spend 10 minutes one day to come up with a unique passphrase to my personal email account, and then you can build off of it in another week off of my next account, I don't want to take up your time, but another thing is another thing we'll put in there is now passphrases, but plus multi-factor authentication. Because when I get into these, I can talk about them for so long, but Google these multi-factor, and everyone is aware on certain banking information, they'll send you a text, or if you have a token, use those tokens, or if you have a security application, I won't name the app, but if you put your information into a secure app, authentication app, they'll send you a text, and then it's multi-factor. So think of it this way. We call it things you know, things you have, and things you are. Okay, so the things you know are the passwords. the things you have in your hand or accessible are like the apps on your phone or tokens where they'll send you a password or a PIN.
Right.
So that's the things you have. And the things you are like now with all the iPhones, they do a face scan or a fingerprint scan or eye retinal. They have the retinal scans, and those are the things you are. So if you can get to two-factor where it's a password and a PIN, you're a lot safer. But if you can get to multi-factor where you have to use a fingerprint to get to your phone, to get to the PIN that they're texting you, right? Then you're a lot safer. And don't, I know it sounds funny, don't put your passwords on your desk, right? Don't put them on a regular, put them in a password wallet where your passwords are safe and secure. Because if someone goes from one Facebook account to another Facebook account, and then you have all that stuff on your phone and you're accessing that, they're going to have access to your passwords, right? So, or your passphrases. I'm sorry, we're not doing passwords anymore.
Right,
we're doing passphrases.
Yeah, see, that's what I do. I started the passphrases a while ago.
Good. So you're literally ahead of probably 75% of the population, because everyone's still angry about I have to do eight characters in a special word. Like, no, that was like 5 years ago.
Right.
You need the passphrase.
And they're like, you mean I have to have a different one for my bank and my email and my social media, like everything. So
and if you choose not to, then don't have that application. If you don't want to do the long, then don't have your bank, don't pay your bills through your bank. If you're not willing to do those extra security steps, because you're opening yourself up, to that.
Okay. That was a lot. But I know there was still some, I think you answered most of the questions that I had, but but like with the attacking the ransomware crimes, usually committed by attacking computers or mobile phones, is it mostly computers or mostly mobile phones?
Definitely mostly computers, but the mobile phones are an entry point. They're gonna want to try and get to that computer, necessarily for the mobile phones are usually those are the ones that help you get into the Facebook hacks and the social, not so much the ransomware, but if they can jump to your phone and then find something out where they can get to your work terminal, where they can download, that will be. Remember, these are advanced persistent threats, and they don't need just one. They're going to use a multitude. They'll use an email. They'll use being able to have they'll send you they call it smishing. They'll send you a text with an executable, and then you push on that text, and then, then they have access, then they can view whatever's on your phone, and you want to protect yourself from that. So it is, and then remember, it's because phones are so it's a part of our life. It's might as well just be attached. If I didn't have to charge it, I would probably never leave it. Right. But it's so prevalent. And so if you think of it as just access, what are they going to attack? It's probably where they have most access, and everybody has it. Everybody has a phone, so.
I brought that up to a few friends recently because they knew we were going to talk about this. And I said, well, do you have virus protection on your phone? And they're like, no, for what? And I'm like, well, if you have it on your computer, you have to have virus protection on your phone too.
There are definitely apps. There's apps out there, and there's many ways that you can put. There's, again, no silver bullet, but if you have a couple of layers, right? Like anything, even in the military, we said it's not. You don't want a single point of failure, right? I want to yell right now. We know this. Because I know you're a veteran. We're veterans.
I'm a military family member.
Okay, good. But no single point of failure, right? I mean, we want layers of protection. So, password, multi-factor, a good security application for your phone. Yes, you want that. Not necessarily on a phone. You can do the antivirus, but good applications that provide you that are extremely important. And you want them. If you can cover your phone, cover your laptop, cover your iPad, everything that you're working on. If you're working on it, it's going to be something that these advanced persistent threats are going to want to target.
Okay. And I know I'm sure some people will listen to this podcast later, so because some may be working or something. But there are so many people who I've spoken with, and some are they're going to implement some measures,
Mm-hmm.
and others are just like, it's not that serious,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel that they've taken every step necessary. But of course, because I don't trust everything and
Mm-hmm.
everybody, I
Yeah.
listen to them and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see a back door without even seeing the back door because I'm listening to what you're saying.
Right.
So I'm hoping people listen to this and take
Yes.
into consideration that it can happen to anyone.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll get into that later, but I did want to share that, it did happen to a few friends of mine here. And for some reason, I don't know if it's just here in El Paso or what, but no
Yeah.
one feels that they can be a victim.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
does happen. So,
Yeah.
and I know we'll get into more of that later on,
Mm-hmm.
ways that these things can happen and how to prevent it. But
Mm-hmm.
Going into this, and that's a new term that I learned too since I've been talking with you guys, the
Mm-hmm.
Internet of Things.
Yes.
Nice. And these emerging trends.
Yes.
What is the Internet of Things when it comes to what you guys are doing?
So I'll just, without defining it, I'm going to tell you what Internet of Things is remember in the old days, the way we got on the internet was that, the screeching of being able to dial in and modem. Right now take that, fast forward that, 40 years. And now we got coffee makers that we can turn on from our cars. We have, everyone has a printer in their house. We have smart bulbs that we can automatically control. We have home security cameras. We have home security alarm systems. We have H and air vac that can temperature control. Guess how all these things are controlled, right? Like, how is it? There's not a wire from your cell phone to your house, right? So it's through the Wi-Fi, it's through the internet. And that's what we mean by Internet of Things. We've gone from one device, one thing that sat on a desktop that was wired in, to half a dozen devices. We got vacuums. You can have your vacuum clean. You press the thing. You can control. I control my pool cleaner. My pool cleaner, I can turn it on and set it off from my phone. That's Internet of Things. And so, and this is where I can go into it. Is it's been such a frontier of new exciting things. I'm so excited that I can turn my pool, like, oh my gosh, I can get it and I don't have to worry about it, and it'll clean automatically, and I can just hit push, or I can sit here and I go to my camera system on my home and I can say, wait, I got either a certain, and I won't mention names, but a certain company where you can see your cameras, and I'll get on here, I can see my pool from here, and I turn my pool, I watch my pool, hit the start button, and I watch it. And I can't tell you, men, we get the biggest pleasure from the simplest things, right?
I was going to say that must be a man.
Yes, it is. It is. But the Internet of Things has expanded, and what companies are doing is they're offering, conveniences of life, right? But they're wanting to make money, these companies, and so they develop these new Internet of Things devices, and I just mentioned a whole swath of them. And they get them out to market. They want them out so fast, they don't do the necessary security protocols, or they're saying, hey, I'm going to get it out to market. And then what are we going to do? Then we'll send out patches, right? Then if we find a vulnerability, we'll patch it after the fact. Or, so if you're going with some new device that just hit the market, they wanted to make money off of that. They wanted to get it out there. They haven't necessarily worked out all the bugs, right? Mm-hmm. And you know what? We as consumers, we want these products. I want that baby monitor. Right. I want to be able to watch my child, Right. And so we're eating these things up, but the security hasn't necessarily caught up with a lot of those devices. And so, there's a website out there, Open Web Application Security Project. They'll list out all the vulnerabilities to these new devices that are coming out. So take the time. If you're it's exciting. I've done it, but just take the time. Be aware that the device not only provides you that comfort and that opportunity to do something very convenient, but there's a security responsibility. Mm-hmm. Again, I'll go back. I think some of your listeners are military. You go back to it. Hey, just because I'm in a platoon of people I trust doesn't mean I'm not putting a lock on my footlocker, right? you have a responsibility to make sure that the security is in there. So you get a new camera, you get a new smart TV, you get a new, what's the name of the device where you can, Alexis, hey, I want to order something from Amazon, I need soap, or, you need to make sure that your security devices are secure. And then, so a simple way to explain that, Monica, would be like, let's say you get the latest, newest modem for a smart TV.
Right.
A lot of times those newest devices have the highest security, right? But if you have a modem that's 5 years old, it defaults to the security from 5 years ago, right? So you need to call your internet provider and saying, hey, I need to get rid of this old WAP 2 or 1. Like you need to get the latest, most recent modem, because if anything in that chain is not up to the highest standards of security, all those devices automatically default to the lowest level. You can have the biggest 70-inch screen TV with the best security on there, but if it's at that 5-year-old modem that you haven't switched with an unnamed provider, you're going to have the lowest level of security. So remember those things about Internet of Things.
So you mentioned like the smart TV. So, and I know that probably wasn't a part of this, but I guess it is technically with smart TV.
Oh yeah.
So are there ways that people can actually hack it? Because people, I have a fear with the smart TV that people are looking at me.
Yep.
They can do that?
Oh yeah. Yes. Sorry, Monica, I didn't mean.
I have security, but at the same time, it's like.
Guess what? There's also programs they can put on your laptop. They'll record your face. They'll record you communicating, or they'll just turn on the microphone and they'll just audio record conversations.
That's how these social media people kind of know if I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right.
If I'm talking about going to a vacation in one country, then all of a sudden it pops up on that social media site. Oh, visit this country.
And then now you're perfectly transitioning. I don't know if you're ready to go there. We go from Internet of Things with all these devices, but now you're mentioning something a little bit of AI.
Yes.
The AI or the artificial, intelligence, where not only will they just take off of, but they're going to, hey, I know Monica, they'll self-figure things out. It's a learning thing. It's like, oh, I know Monica comes home at such and such a time every day. So I'm going to have the camera automatically or the thing automatically come on. So again, now we're going into the future. So, we're talking about passwords of 8 characters or, whatever. Now we're going into the future of things where, the companies are already using AI. They're using it in programs to help benefit workers do their job. They're helping AI help scan HR, people that are trying to get jobs. They're using AI to help their intelligence to evaluate, who's coming on at certain times of day. And it's that. And what were you saying? Now we're having virtual meetings where I'm an avatar, and then I'll say this. We know. Facebook just changed their name to Metaverse. The Metaverse is now my avatar is joining this meeting. And so all this.
I mean, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's creepy.
Yes.
But I'm interested in AI, but at the same time, it's like, what are the pros and cons? Like,
we're
moving forward.
It's happening. So, it's happening. So, we're going to be jumping on board with it. Like I said, companies are already using it. For 37% of the companies are already using some form of AI related to those things: job augmentation, business intelligence. They're using it really big in computing. So now take that and flip it, Monica, from the things that businesses are using it for legitimate means, and think about how bad guys are going to use it for bad guy means. They're going to use it for large scale attacks. They're going to use it, for hacking, surveillance. So they can use AI. If they can get into our Internet of Things and they can get an application in there, right? And then, like we were just talking about, cameras, home security systems, your temperature control, they can get in and they can use it to, they can put an AI that will automatically evaluate your movements in your house. When you leave for work, when are you going to your bedroom? Oh, I'm not hearing Monica near her laptop. I'm hearing her in another part of the house, right? That's again, not trying, don't want to scare
Oh no,
people,
I'm not.
but
It's just creepy
yeah,
because with so many people using social media
yeah. So
and the
yeah,
new products and the
yeah,
new things that
right.
are coming out, and
Hmm.
then people are wondering, well, gee, I keep getting this message or this email or this advertisement about how's your love life.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm thinking, is that
Yep.
how they know
Hmm.
that stuff? Like when people get those messages. So
Yeah.
it's I mean, it's intriguing, but at the
Yeah.
same time,
Yeah.
it's kind of scary.
Yeah. And then think of it, as many ways as there's do good with these applications, there's just as many bad. And then
Mhm.
one of the more, and I want to bring it home for the listeners on that AI, what they recently had in the UK was they had a AI program that was able to pick up a voice recordings and then transport it to someone had a voice authentication for their banking app and were able to transfer money out of an account using that AI performance replicator,
Just
right?
with their voice.
Yes, yes. And then also imagine, um, if your listeners do it, they can Google right now, or they can research, they can research deep fakes. The deep fakes where they'll take a photo and be able to make it appear as if it's a
Yeah,
person or something. If your face is on the
yeah.
internet and they take it and they can manipulate it to
And they're
look at,
doing
and
that with video too. Like,
yes, yeah, they're
with,
they're manipulating. If we look at some of they've been doing it. One of the fun things they've been doing is with politicians, right? They have
yeah,
so much video of politicians that they're taking it and then they're doing these deep fakes to making it look as if it's a certain politician that's actually saying these words,
right.
and it affects broad swaths
Mhm,
of communities.
right.
And
I think I
so,
even laughed at that at first until I was like, wait, if they're doing that to them, they can literally do that to us. And I think that's how people
mhm,
can get in trouble in the
mhm,
future. Like
yes,
how does that work with
right,
criminals and
yeah,
trying to defend yourself if you know that you weren't there,
yep.
but someone else has you there on video and they just
Defend.
have your face.
You just said it, Monica. We have to be aware and we have to protect ourselves now,
Okay.
from
Yes.
those things.
And how do we do
So
that?
great. So, mostly with our devices and our phone, the first two we've kind of already sprinkled in a little bit of them with the, passphrases, no more passwords, regular patching. I know it's annoying when we get those things. Hey, your laptop wants to download this patch, or you need to do them right away. I don't know if, you know, and everyone recalls we got them on our phones. I think it was less than a month ago where they said, "Hey, there's there's also a thing called end day attack, a known vulnerability." And so our phones, and I just I'll stay out of the realm of identifying the phone, but we
Right.
got a thing. Hey, these phones, the apps have a vulnerability. You need to download this now, right? And so
Yeah.
everyone should. It was on the national news. It was a known attack, a known vulnerability that wasn't patched. So the company sent out, hey, protect yourself and patch it right now.
Mhm.
So yes, regular patching, changing your passwords, multi-factor authentication, um, actively managing your systems. And this is going back to the small business, not
Mhm.
necessarily just your mobile phones,
Mhm.
but the prevention, detection, and response model, but where you're actually monitoring the traffic that's coming in. Because if you have a normal set of traffic that's
Mhm.
coming into your network, you can monitor that. You can put a number of tools and applications to that, that can automatically alert you to certain things and protect you. But the human element is you have to spend time to evaluate that, right? If you're
Mhm.
not, if you just have something out there that you think is doing the job, but you're not actually putting the eyes on and doing the work right, they can get by and get around it.
Right.
So also the actively managing your systems is important. Um,
Mhm. Well,
I mentioned earlier a topic, I was saying compartmentalizing, and that means separate plumbing. So you don't have to always compartmentalize, like having something totally off. You can segment it also,
mhm.
meaning you have something with, a file within a file. You can segment it, make it a little bit, give it more access, increase the access requirements, put in a protection or put in a PIN number to be able to get access to that. Restricting your footprint, minimizing your footprint as far as having exposed ports on your network. So like, printers that are no longer, used, or nodes, are access points that persons they're running these tools against, where you're doing, you can do your own testing. The interesting thing about the cyber world is, if you've picked up a theme of what I've said, is all the good tools by the good guys, or we call them, white hats or blue hats defenders. They take the good stuff, and the red hats, the attackers, are using those same tools. So you can use those tools, the Metasploits. You can do your own protection or pen testing of your own network if you want. But usually those persons are so busy operating the network, it's hard to cut out those times for them to be able to take the time to, first off, to spend time defending, but also to spend time actually attacking your own network, because that's the best way to find out how to protect yourself. But another thing is having good backups, because like I said, there's no silver bullet, right? Like, again, I'll reiterate, the best of the best have been broken into. And so to say that everyone is bullet, you can't say that. But what you can do is you can do backups of your system, and you can protect yourself by creating a backup. Do it on a weekly basis. Usually the first time you do it, it takes longer, but then as you do it more often, it takes less time, and you can do backups, and then you can do step up, where you do a partial, where you only do the backup to the things that have been changed. But the important thing to do with those backups is then unplug them from the network. Don't do a backup and leave it as part of the network, right? Because the guys know those are they're going to find them, and they're going to attack them. You need to back it up, and then you need to encrypt it, and you need to separate it from that. So the backups being more distant, not a part of that network. And if you can create distance, like if you do a backup and then you take it and you store it in another location, that's actually the best. That's the best practice to have.
Okay. Wow. Gosh. I wish we had 2 hours, but
well, I'll be happy to come back sometime.
Yes,
we can come back again.
Come back, because I know there's some other things that we probably didn't get into, but I do want to mention, like, and we probably have a few minutes. So like when it comes to part of those emerging trends type of things, like QR codes.
Yes.
Everybody loves QR codes. A lot of my clients want QR codes on everything.
Yes.
And I see everybody scanning, and I'm always one of those people who I'm not scanning this because I don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So I'm thinking everybody's trying to get something from me in as far as information.
Yeah.
So where does that information go? Like, who do we know? How do we know who set up this QR code?
Yep.
And there are different spaces on the internet where you can go to get your own QR code. But who are the companies that own these places where you can make your own QR code?
Exactly,
so
right. And
how
bad
does that
guys
work with all this?
Well, QR codes have been around a while. They're not new, but with COVID, right? We probably didn't see them much, or we didn't pay attention. But when COVID came, we want to be sterile, protective. We didn't want to do menus and have those pieces of paper. So they did the QR. They went back to an old technology, which again doesn't have a lot of security built in. Anyone can kind of create. You can have your own QR code, and so nothing. If you think about it, going out to your favorite restaurant or your favorite bar, what have you, and they have a code for the menu, and you simply, doesn't take much for someone to kind of come in and put a different QR code and put a little piece of tape over the top of that one and make it look as if it's, and then the next thing you know, that QR code is taking you to a site, right? And that site might eventually take you to the actual site where you can actually see the menu and stuff, but could also take you to somewhere where they can see what it is that you're typing, or they can see your credentials. We call credentials as your password, your user ID, and they're capturing that from you to use at a later date or another time. And And again, that's a good, and like you're saying, emerging trends, and they use them. The bad guys are professionals. I guess I could go back to this story, right? The FBI, early in our history, we started off, one of our favorite things was, bank robberies. We go after these famous bank robbers, and the guys are going around, right? And so let me ask you this, and I don't know if any listeners have heard me before, but I just love using this analogy. It's like, what do you think the average bank robber makes on a bank robbery nowadays, if they went into a bank and robbed a bank?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think they get away with much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, would I just guess a number? Because
$5,000.
yeah, it's less than that. It's less than
Oh, really?
5,000. It's actually more around $2,500, $2,000.
Okay.
So let's take that analogy. Look at all the threat. You got to leave your house. You got a threat. You got the chance of being arrested, of being shot, of being tackled, beat up, if you went into an actual bank to do this, right? But I could stay at home in my pajamas with my coffee, never leave the security of my house, and do some of this hacking stuff. And what would you think what would your guess be the average hack or hacker could get away with monetarily wise on a single event?
A hacker?
Yeah.
More than a bank robber.
Or a bank, yeah, right. So you're on the right track.
Millions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, the average is 150,000. So I could leave my house, risk being shot, killed, whatever, being identified, jumped on for less than $2,500, or I could do something in this realm, right? So people are taking advantage of this technology and the emerging trend, and it's already been moving in this. But I like to emphasize, like, they feel safe. They can protect. They can go through virtual private network providers and obfuscate their identities. So it makes it very challenging, the investigation portion of it. But they're very smart. They're people just like you and me. So they pick up on these trends, these QR codes, the COVID. Hey, help the COVID
the
charities, for this, and then you click on this site, which you get an email, and you think you didn't hover to verify that it's going to a legitimate site, but you want to, or the fires on the western United States, or the hurricanes and snow stuff of the Northeast. So yes, emerging trends, just be aware. And that's another thing, our security, obviously the FBI, the local police, and we're here to help, but your personal awareness and personal security is probably your number one defense.
Okay.
And if you take that 1 minute, to create a passphrase, multi-factor, you can really protect yourself in a number of ways.
Okay. Wow. Well, I know I have another question before we go into it, and of course it has to do with the future.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But since we have one question from someone, I guess, regarding maybe when we were talking about ransomware and things like that. But the question is the intranet more secure than the internet? And also, sometimes you have to use remote access for in order to, like, I guess, your cable.
Yep.
And the IT departments or things like Netgear to fix something on your CPU. But after it's fixed, should you go back and change the password?
Yes.
Okay.
Change the password. And if you had to use that remote tool to get in, you need to have high security on that remote tool. That is, besides the human aspect, that's a great question, by the way. I can tell someone is very technically knowledgeable, but that's, besides phishing, the human error, the next highest thing that we're seeing is those remote access tools being manipulated or used against, people, because people want to telework. Companies are pushing that out for safety. So again, that's an emerging trend. And the number one vulnerability on those are the remote management and monitoring tools. And what's funny is to take it a step further. Yeah, you need to, if you need to use those tools, but if they're using it on those Internet of Things, and then, someone's on the same device and looking at personal emails and they're clicking on it, guess what they're going to have access to? They're going to have a front row seat to when you log into your business and do work, right? So you have to be aware of that, and you have to put securities around that. because that is after the human factor, the remote management monitoring tools are the number one thing that's being hacked. And usually what they've been doing is they try to focus in on people that have been identified, because these people do their homework. They try to focus in on people that have access to administrative access, so the IT security persons or finance persons, or another thing is part of it is the whaling, or trying to go after executives, right? Because nothing's better than getting into an executive, because if I got an email from my boss and he says, hey, get this done. So imagine that if they get into a remote monitoring tool, and you get an email from your chief executive, and he says, Jeanette, I want you to send this invoice to this thing, and I need it done in the next 30 minutes. Typically, if you haven't set in the policy or the procedure that, hey, I'm going to do a verbal verification, right, more than likely, and these are people that could be paying invoices all day long, and they get 20, 30 of them a day. Some of them may even have a kind of an automated service where they can just click accept, they need to take that extra step to verbally verify. So, but the whaling and getting into those executives is a big part of what your listener was going back to, was that remote management. Because a lot of, supervisors have those remote access tools on their computers, and you have to have those extra. And if they have that remote management and it's already dialed into the network, and they have high access, when they still shouldn't have access as an executive. Just because you're executive doesn't mean you should have access to everything, right? And you need to pare that down, the least privilege part of it. Did I fully? Yes, the remote access tools and monitoring has been the next thing.
I think that answer that and more, because this is something that I think needs to go on, and businesses truly need to implement. And I guess that preventative measure would be for businesses, small businesses and big businesses, educational institutions too, to implement that as policy.
Monica, I have to jump on you now. No, you're talking about institutions, education. Yeah. Think about medical facilities, universities, right?
Yeah.
So we had a major medical facility in California. Won't say the location, right? They had they have these new Internet of Things, of these medical equipment that monitors oxygen levels, monitors drug dripping in. So they have this medical equipment is controlled by what? Internet access. So they had a ransomware. So these actors had access to medical equipment, to those Internet of Things devices that are now in hospitals every day. So again, I didn't mean to. Well, when you mentioned it, it made me think we had a hospital system that was a victim of ransomware, and they didn't have access to any of that. And then they're scrambling. Oh, I can't use this device. I got to go back to the old equipment. But we got rid of the old equipment that doesn't have, that access. Now nurses are having to go room to room to monitor, instead of being able to sit at their departments and monitor the whole wing.
Right.
So, yes, very scary. And then
scary.
I'll keep going. I'll throw in another about the home.
Yeah.
Now think about the remote management tool that your listener mentioned. Imagine those supervisors that have, we call them industry control systems. And it's been a big thing that we talked about, control systems of, oh, I'm a supervisor and I'm an executive over a water company.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have mechanisms where you can control mechanical devices that control the amount of water, control the amount of chlorine, control the amount of chemicals in there. So those are another concern. Those industrial control systems are another thing that are being, managed. And, if you have a metal company that produces metal, and they're able to work from home and monitor, certain controls from their homes in that plant. So industrial control systems is another thing of the future it's actually been going on for a few years now, but has gotten more victimized as time passes.
It's a lot. It's like every day and every new thing you get, you just still have to implement that security measure. But I don't think we just think of that every day just to do, but we're going to have to start doing that.
Yes.
Especially now, because, now thinking of the smart TV.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, what part of it can I cover?
Yes.
I don't know. I
Yes.
don't know. That's scary.
Right.
That's pretty scary.
It is. I've gotten in the habit as I put a little post-it over my, my
Yeah, I do.
phone, and those little things, and so yeah, those little.
So just for GP, because I know there are a lot of people that are, and we'll probably talk about that coming in December when it comes to shopping. The people are going to be getting new TVs, phones,
Yep.
and all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm still on the smart TV and the cable and all that.
Right.
When you upgrade something, how you have to upgrade everything that goes along with that kind of, if you want to be secure.
Yes, I would contact my internet provider, my phone service provider, and say, hey, I want the most updated modem possible. Right. Because you want it to match that security. Now those have changed, and I think we're getting into wire access protocol 6 now. I think we've been through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 6 is kind of the most updated one.
I'm gonna have to learn about all of that.
And then remember, there's going to be new ones for when we get to 5G too, right? Because you go to
5G. That was my next question.
We start moving into 5G. You need to have, we call it the hardware. You need to have the hardware that matches the new availability. The new technology. Because if you have old hardware, new technology doesn't match necessarily, and it definitely does not work for security.
Right. So when it comes to that, as we end this right now, when it comes to 5G, because I hear a lot of people saying that, 5G is the reason why the birds aren't in the air or something. I don't know. I
don't know the answer to that one, Monica. I don't know.
Everyone has something against 5G.
Yes.
But can you explain a little bit about it if you know anything about it?
I just know that I don't know a lot about it. I just know that it's going to increase the speed, and it's going to it's going to make things happen that much quicker. But I do know that it's being pushed out there. And I know, just like a lot of the new technologies, there's not a lot of the hardware that can provide you good security along with that new technology. Right. So the technology will be available. The security on your phones will probably be pretty good. But I wouldn't know about your modem at home or your routers, that sort of thing. So,
okay, this has been a lot.
Yeah, sorry, but it's. I guess you're on the right. It's going to be more important as we move forward, and if we now, you get to that awareness state, you're moving in the right direction, and then not sticking your head in the sand.
Yeah. Yes. And I know, for those who are listening, we know you may have questions. But before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add, or can you add?
Yes.
Relating to ransomware, the business email everything we talked about today. Is there anything else that you'd like to?
I think we've covered a lot of it really well. I would like to mention our Internet Computer Crimes website. It's ic3.gov.
Okay.
If you're a victim of Facebook hacking, or if you're a victim of any type of cyber-related crime, internet-related crime, we encourage the reporting. Obviously, I would say if you're a victim of that, you need to always contact your financial institution and make sure you change stuff and update stuff. But those are the best way for us to get the information. Now, I always do this short little thing where I say we can't respond to all IC3 complaints because it's monetary, right? We have victims that are, have lost millions of dollars and tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands. So it's hard. It's difficult for us to do every IC3 complaint when it's like a $500 loss or $1,000. We still try, but the reason it's important is because if we get it all into the IC3, we can put them all together. Usually, if we can identify similar IP addresses or similar locations, it allows us to put bigger investigations together on those threat actors. So even if we can't personally respond to every, Facebook hack where someone lost $500 or $200, we still need that information, and it's still very important. So also, pay attention to your consumer alerts and your industry alerts. Especially for your devices, and keep keep abreast of those trends. Because again, that allows you to prepare and put something into place beforehand.
Now, if there are like demographics here locally who may have issues, like I know there are some here, you know, including some friends of mine who have been hacked, and all of them are related to, they're all a part of a certain group of people, and some of them don't even know each other, but they just also happen to be have this one thing in common. And I know that they've been hacked recently, and from social media to their email addresses. So if that's the case, what can they do? And this is locally, this is just recently happening.
Right. And this is happening. When it happens to you, you think you're the only one, but it happens to all these groups. If you think about what these actors do, if they get into one of these groups, if you're a social group and you have something in common, and they get into one of the groups, Facebooks or emails or social media accounts, they're going to exploit that. They're going to go all across that. So the first thing you need to do is if someone tells you, hey, I received a weird email from you, or, you need to assume, hey, I was hacked, and you need to close down that account, start up a new one. I know we're all very attached to these social media accounts because it has photos, memories, and it's nice when you get those, hey, 5 years ago, you were doing this. I love that stuff. But you really have to be willing to start fresh, start a new account, reset your passwords, but also more importantly, let everyone in your group know, hey, I was recently a victim of this, and you need to change your account information and change your passwords as well. So the first thing is because it's much like those big businesses, when they don't share, it's the same thing in your own little groups. Yeah. If you don't share that you were a victim and you keep it to yourself, you're allowing the rest of the people in your group to be further victimized. So don't be like I said, the best of the best get hacked. So don't feel like, and it hurts because a lot of times they play on your emotions. They play on your family members, what they see in your Facebook or your emails. They use that to their advantage, and they're going to use it to make you feel bad about being a victim or to their advantage. So everyone can get it, but can get hacked, but you can protect yourself. But the most important is, if you are, please let your social community know.
Okay. And how can we get in touch with you guys locally if there is an issue, something like that? Is that or something like that when it comes to cyber crimes? Is it something more for the police or the FBI?
So I always say you always want to let the local police know. I think just go through, let your financial institution, let the local police know, and then contact us through IC3. Okay. We have our phone number at 915-832-5000. They may redirect you, but if it's if it's something that's important, we would try and pick that up. We also have our EP_cyber domain at fbi.gov. Feel free to reach out in that manner. So there's a multitude of ways to be able to reach out to us. And depending on it, like, we've had, a lot of persons, and if we get an IC3 account and it notice, typically if it is something of substantial, we are able to reach out that same day. But sometimes it does take us a few days to get back out if it is, because we do get, if you think about it, across the nation, the FBI gets about 2,000 complaints a day, or like 10,000 complaints a day. Wow. But I guess the 2,000 is in the cyber realm maybe, but it's high numbers. And so difficult for us to get to all of them, but you can get us there, EP_cyber at El Paso or at fbi.gov. Will get us 832-5000 as well.
Okay. Well, this has been so eye-opening, and I just want to go home and go through everything now again.
Yep.
But for those who are listening, please make sure to take precautions when it comes to your phone, your smart TV, anything that you use that's, I guess, remote. I mean, everything we do literally is remote. So, and we will definitely have the FBI back on here to talk about what else is trending, because it seems like it's never ending when it comes to cyber crimes. So it's like we have to be reminded to take precautions.
Yep. I would be more than happy to come back out and
Yes.
share with you guys. Yep.
Well, I thank you all for listening to another edition of First Fridays with the FBI. And again, well, before we go, next month's First Fridays with the FBI, we'll have Jeanette back on and we'll be talking about holiday scams. So before you buy anything, just wait. But it was a pleasure speaking with Agent Davis, and we look forward to seeing you guys the next First Friday, and that's in December. So until then, you guys have a great November.